Hey everybody, welcome to another Full Empire Promotions live event. As always, I'm Dominic. I'll be your host for this Q&A with Kent MCCORD. We are live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. So thank you so much to everyone who's watching us live. Give it a few minutes for people to pop in. And if you'd like to chat with Kent one-on-one, tomorrow, December 13th, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, Kent will be chatting with fans on Zoom. You can have your own private chat for 5 minutes and talk to Kent about whatever you like. And we'll even send you a video recording of your meeting. You can book your session at fullempirepromotions.com. And you can also get personalized autographed photos from Kent, as well as video greetings. So for all of that, check out fullempirepromotions.com. And I do want to remind you that if you're watching us on Facebook and you want to ask a question, you have to go to facebook.com/StreamYard and allow access to your Facebook page. If you don't do that, your question's going to come up and it's just going to say Facebook user. It's not going to have your picture or your name. So make sure you do that. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, you don't need to do that. Well, without further ado, we're going to roll a demo clip to show you some of Kent's work, and then we'll bring Kent on. Be back in a sec.
Didn't we meet a roll call?
Yes, sir.
You know, I can tell right off.
Yes, sir.
You got a real flair for police work.
Yes, sir.
Reed, do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
See if you can manage to follow me to the car.
As much as it's going to piss you off, you're going to have to play the game on this one. Effective immediately. Federal task force under the direction of Special Agent Peter Keyes will be investigating criminal activities involving the trafficking and distribution of controlled substances. You will extend him your full cooperation.
Scott, how are you? Nathan. General Thomas is hemorrhaging up on the aircraft carrier.
How'd you keep his Alpha Commandos off this mission?
I said a welcome wagon with a gun doesn't make a very good first impression.
What if something out there is still alive?
Then we're the luckiest sailors in history.
What if they attack us?
For a uniform, thinks alike.
Oh, you were one.
Yeah, for exploration, not for conquest.
You like your parking place?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yours looks bigger.
Don't forget it. Let's go to work. Expecting great things from you, Don. It's Don, right?
Yeah, Don is fine. Dutch works too.
Now, there's a lot of tradition that goes with his badge. Some of us would rather die than to see it abused or dishonored. Come on, son. We got a lot of work to do.
Unger, didn't you serve under Over in the Air Force?
Not directly. Technically, Dunn was under Over and I was under Dunn.
Yep. So, Dunn, you were under Over and over Unger.
Yep. That's right. Dunn was over Unger and I was over Dunn.
So you see, both Dunn and I were under Over, even though I was under Dunn.
I couldn't turn you loose yet on the citizens of Los Angeles.
No, sir.
Not without a leash.
No, sir.
Let's head for the barn.
Wow. His first credit was in 1964 officially in Viva Las Vegas with Elvis. And he's still working today. You may know him best from Adam 12 as Officer Jim Reed and other credits on Farscape, Galactica 1980, Predator 2. Most recently, video game voice work on Starfield, the video game, and many more. Let's welcome Kent.
Hey, Dom. Actually, my first credit was 1962
Wow, that's not on IMDb.
on the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet.
Well, that's not supposed to fix that. That's not on IMDb.
Yeah.
It has you as Viva Las Vegas as casino patron.
Yeah,
And, working with Elvis.
that was the first location I ever went on. Was 64. They in those days, when the Screen Extras Guild was still in existence, and there were a finite number of members of the Screen Extras Guild, you worked in a lot of product, and I was always busy. We did Ozzie and Harriet basically from September until the end of April, May, and then the summer was off, and then I'd be working all over town at different studios, working background. And over the years, I wound up working on 5 Elvis pictures. Like I said, Viva Las Vegas was the first location. There were all of the guys that Elvis was very comfortable with. We all flew up to Vegas. We were put up at a hotel called the Tally Ho, which is now the Aladdin, I think is what it, no, or, yeah, I think of the Aladdin, and given a per diem. And then our tough job was to go lay around the swimming pool at the Flamingo Hotel, which was the main location of the movie, where the pool was, and Elvis and Ann pushes him into the swimming pool, and he loses the money and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it sounds like a tough job.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, we already have over 30 people watching, so drop some comments, guys. Let us know where you're watching from, and put some questions down there for us.
Yeah.
But I do want to announce a little bit in convention news. We just confirmed that Kent will be appearing at Steel City Comic Con. I'll put that up there, April 10th through the 12th. One of the best Comic Cons out there. So you can visit steelcitycon.com. This is breaking. It hasn't been announced yet, but they will be putting Kent up on social media and the website and all that. And he'll be there 10th through the 12th.
Be there or be square.
That's right. That's right. All right. Let's see if we have any questions coming up. So just Daniel says, watching from Iowa.
Where in Iowa, Daniel?
Um,
My wife's parents are Sioux City, Storm Lake, and Bronson. If you're in, anywhere near there. We've been through Storm Lake, my wife and I, on a trip we took one time. And they migrated out here during the Second World War from Iowa out to here, but all kinds of relatives back in Iowa.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. He says in Fairfax.
Near Cedar Rapids. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Stacy's watching from Florida. I believe you have a Zoom with her tomorrow.
Oh, good. Hi, Stacy.
She's got a pile of cats there.
Yeah. Again, my grandmother lived in St. Pete, and we were back there, just before the pandemic, I think. When we did Tampa. And, I'd get back there every once in a while. When Marty and I were doing a lot of appearances and everything, I got to visit my grandmother in St. Petersburg. So, she would migrate to California during the heat of Florida, and she drove. Maybe that's where I get my driving from, Dominic. we were just talking about the Pittsburgh thing. Dominic says that I don't think you're going to want to drive that one, but I do like to drive, and it just struck me just now that my grandmother would drive from St. Petersburg, Florida to Los Angeles.
Hell of a drive.
And of course, I don't remember at what age. She was doing that up into her late 60s, I think.
Yeah.
A little beyond that now. But our last trip back to Indianapolis, we took it 2 years ago. We drove to Indy for the 500 and drove back, and it took a little out of me this trip.
Yeah.
Of course, what's happened with freeways now, and I'm sure everybody's experiencing this also. You get on the freeway now and you're doing 80, 90 miles an hour just to keep up. And, you got to pay a lot of attention when you're traveling at that pace. I like driving, and I like driving fast, but most of my fast driving was confined to a racetrack where everybody's going in the same direction. And,
Right.
And everybody's been trained, and you got a helmet on. So.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I know you just did that drive to Albuquerque.
Did the Albuquerque and back. That wasn't too bad.
Yeah. So Linda says, I'm in PA, but a retired New York City detective. I became a cop because of you. Linda, where at in PA? Or come to Steel City Con in April. Yeah,
that's very flattering, Linda, that you became a cop because of Adam 12, Martin or me. It's one of the things that happened with Adam 12, and it happened repeatedly. And so it's not an anomaly. It was more the rule. How many people were influenced by the show that then went on to get involved in law enforcement? I just had a meeting with our new chief of police here in Los Angeles. It's been about 4 months ago. And Jim McDonald has said in 2 interviews that he's done, we need another Adam 12. And so when I met with him, I said, Jim, and I knew him when he was deputy chief under Chief Bratton. And so that's 20 years or so now. And so when I heard that he had made those remarks, I said, Jim, you know that you don't need another Adam 12. You got Adam 12 on like 4 times a day, number one. Number two, as a suggestion, I would get the box set of Adam 12 and present them to every graduate of the police academy. And while radio procedures and stuff and the communications have changed, the overall approach to the job hasn't. And as a matter of fact, looking back on the history of the show, and when we were you'd be in contact, we'd be in the streets of Los Angeles working, and inevitably some, 2 guys riding an A car, that's a 2-man car, by the way, in LA would stop and want to say hello, and you'd get a comment from some of these officers, and one of them was, I want to thank you. And I said, for what? He says, well, you probably saved my life. And I said, how did I do that? He said, well, my approach to the job was kind of an adversarial approach, and I started emulating the way that you did the job, and you probably saved my life, and I just wanted to thank you for that. Wow. And that was quite flattering. I mean, the amazing effect that what we do in the motion picture industry has on a viewing public is profound. And I know growing up, when I was a youngster, and we didn't get television until about 1950. And then there were the Hopalong Cassidys and the Lone Rangers, and the Ozzie and Harriets came on in 52, and Dragnet also came on in 52, and Superman, and all those early shows that, you really took to heart and kind of learned something from. And people like Roy Rogers, who I had the great pleasure of meeting when I was older, and we'd been doing Adam 12. And I went up and I introduced myself to Roy Rogers. And if all of you out there don't know who Roy Rogers was, look him up. He was the king of the cowboys. He was motion pictures and then got into television. But I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Rogers, I'm Kent McCord. I did a show called Adam 12. And he said, of course you did. I watch you all the time. And I got a huge kick out of that. And I said, well, I just wanted to let you know that you were a big influence on me growing up. And, so I got a chance to tell one of my heroes that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like with a name like Roy Rogers, you have to be a cowboy.
Yeah. Leonard Sly.
Yeah.
By the way, he was one of the sons of the pioneers also. He was one of the, he was the singing cowboy.
Yeah. Shelley, who you have Zooms with, said she just purchased the Adam 12 box set.
Yeah, they did do a good job on that. I mean, they look better on that DVD release than they looked originally when they were first aired. And the fact of the matter is that most of this stuff, I've got to tell you, I did 5 years of the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. I stood in for Ricky, and I did a role as Kent, one of the fraternity brothers. And they have released all 435 episodes of the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet from 1952 to 1966. And I was there for season 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And to look at those shows now, I shot some screen grabs, and you can't tell, on a 4K television, you can't tell that I didn't shoot that thing live. I mean, it's just unbelievable what they've been able to do and what has happened with the ability for those of us who grew up when I did, like I said, not getting a television until about 1950. And the screen was about 13 inches. That was a big screen in those days.
And the rabbit ears.
Yeah. And it was only 240 lines of resolution. So you could, basically see the striation, like between the Venetian blinds that are behind you, Dominic, kind of in a way. And then as it increased to 480, and then you got 720 and now 1080 and 4K.
Yeah.
Just makes this thing so unbelievable.
Yeah. It'd be great if they did the 4K of Adam 12, if they did like a widescreen version.
I wish they would. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
they'll probably wind up with it. Another bite of the apple. They're always looking to do another bite. And, you wind up, it's like all of our record collections. We had vinyl, and then we had, CDs, and now we've got streaming, and it's just unbelievable.
But now everybody's going back to vinyl, because it's better quality. It's better quality than streaming.
Yeah.
Even digital. So, Linda's asking, I'm sure we all know this, but she's asking if you and Marty were best friends.
We were. Absolutely. Yeah.
Your show's on the screen.
I was a very lucky person in this business, starting on the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, and walking in to a family, basically, and I'm talking about the entire crew as well as a real family, Ozzie and Harriet, David and Rick, and becoming part of that family. And then lucky enough, when we started doing Adam 12, that Jack Webb hired Marty, who he had known from back in like 1949, I think was the first time Marty and Jack worked together. And it was on a movie called The Halls of Montezuma. Mm-hmm. And then Marty did Dragnet on radio before it transitioned over to television in 52. So Marty and Jack had a relationship. And Marty, I've told this story so many times before, Marty Milner had one of the most groundbreaking television shows in the history of television at that time, called Route 66. And what was groundbreaking about it was they put a crew in a truck and all of the equipment, and they traversed the United States, basically, as Marty said, following the sun, because we were shooting on location, not specifically on Route 66 alone, but going, we're down into Florida, down into Georgia, New Mexico, and places like that. And so that was a huge show for my generation. And then I didn't meet Marty. I worked on a show called Gidget that Sally Field starred in, the Gidget that's Sally Field. And Marty did an episode of Gidget playing the kahuna. And this guy that's a surfer and the envy of everybody and all this stuff. And you can catch me in the background doing that. And that was the first time I was really ever in a relationship to Marty. But when Marty and I did the pilot of Adam 12, the first morning of the show, we were to go to the back lot at Universal in a parking area, and then we were going to be picked up to be taken to the location. And while Marty and I were standing there and we just said hello to each other, he gave out this great big yawn. And he went, God, I could never sleep before I start one of these. And I thought, wow, Martin Milner, who's been in movies since he was 13 and through all the film career that he had, from Halls of Montezuma to Life with Father to, Sands of Iwo Jima and on through, he couldn't sleep last night. It just cemented us together. He was so open and honest about that moment, and because I sure as heck didn't sleep.
I'm sure.
And, it was a big moment, but it was that kind of openness, and from that moment on, Marty and I were friends, and we remained friends. Our families meshed. We did vacations together. Marty had moved from Hollywood down to Fallbrook, California, about 100 miles away. And by the way, for those of you who have ever watched the Laugh-In stuff that Marty and I did, one of the things that got me giggling is Marty, we had finished work on Adam 12 and we went over to NBC to shoot our stuff for Laugh-In. And we just had this little gag, that was going to be, one taken out on this thing. And I got the giggles. And Marty wanted to get the hell out of there because he had to drive 100 miles down to Fallbrook. And it was on, I think it was a Friday night or a Thursday night. And it was getting later and later, and I just kept cracking up. And he tried to get me to stop laughing. And I'd get in these laughing jags every once in a while. It happened a couple times when we were doing that show. And something just tickled the hell out of me.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Rebecca's asking who won the football game between you and Elvis.
Hi, Rebecca. We did, and we being this was February of 1961. So we're looking at 65 years ago, coming up in a couple months. A friend of mine was going to UCLA. I was living with his family. He came home from school. I just finished my freshman football season in college, and Mike came home, and he was living at UCLA in a fraternity, and he said, "We're going to get together and play a touch football game soon. Would you be interested?" I said, "Sure, yeah. Let me know." And I said, "Who's going to play?" And he said, "Well, Ricky Nelson is putting together a team that we're going to play Elvis Presley." And I said, "Oh, yeah, Mike, let me know when that happens." And so a couple of weeks later, Mike comes home and he said, you know that game that I mentioned, we're going to play it this weekend, but tonight we're going to drive into Hollywood and meet Ricky and talk about, some drops and plays and all of this stuff." And sure enough, we drove up and met Rick. And then the next morning, we met at the Phi-Psi House at UCLA on campus and caravanned over to this little park called Deneve Park in Bel Air. And the game, Elvis pulls up in his Rolls, followed by a couple of Cadillacs with all what are affectionately known as the Memphis Mafia. Red West, who became a friend, Sonny, who became a friend, all of the guys, and that was my first foray into the connection with Rick and Elvis. And it was from that Rick invited me to come over and visit the set. Then Ozzy started throwing stuff my way. But we won the game. And one of the things that happened was it was February. So in Los Angeles, in February, you're getting dark around 4:45, 5 o'clock. And we started playing, if I remember right, we all met like 9 o'clock in the morning at this little park. And we started playing. And we just kept playing until it got too dark because Elvis was behind and they were trying to catch up. And the other thing that is interesting about that, there is no visual picture or anything that I've ever seen about that day.
Imagine if social media was around then.
You know, I mean, this is 1961, where word of mouth got out, and this park became surrounded with about 500 people. And Pat Boone was there with Shirley and the girls, you know, when he came by, and Jody McRae, Joel McRae's son was there, and others. And you know, it was just word of mouth. I've often wondered if social media had been around and the king of rock and roll on one hand and the crown prince of rock and roll on the other, Ricky Nelson and Elvis Presley,
Right.
playing this game. And it went on for hours. There would have been, I mean, they would have had to have had, you know, such control over the traffic and everything that was going on. It was just on, you know.
Wow.
So we did win the game. Red West, who passed away a couple years ago, Red called me. Red and I stayed friends. Red and I worked together on a movie called John Goldfarb, Please Come Home, as well as other things. He worked on a movie that I did called Woman's Story that I had done that didn't really get a release. It's out there somewhere, and hopefully it'll get released at some point. But, you know, Red worked on Baba Black Sheep with Bobby Conrad. And so Red called me and he said, his wife, Pat, he said, Pat and I are writing a book. And he said, I want to get it straight about the football game. And I said, we won, Red. And he said, yeah, but it wasn't by much. I said, no, but we won. and he said, were Rams playing on that team? And I said, no, we didn't have any Rams. Ricky was rooming with a man named Charlie Britt, and Charlie and I still converse monthly, if not weekly. And he's living back in South Carolina. I'm sorry. And so Charlie was playing with the Rams at the time, but the Rams season had ended, and Charlie went back to his home in Georgia at that time. And, you know, but we did have a very good team. Like I said, I just finished my freshman season. Mike Hafner had just finished his freshman season. And several UCLA ball players wound up on our team. So we were loaded. But so was Elvis. These guys were playing all the time. You know, they had their little Elvis EP Enterprise shirts on, and you know.
Wow.
And by the way, everybody competed very, very hard. But we played a very fair game. It's memorialized in a couple of books. You can look it up. One of the books is Sonny West's Taking Care of Business, and then there is another one that was written by, I can't remember who, but it said, and at that time I was about 235, 240. And they, in the one book, it says, you know, on the kickoff, it's a guy named Forrest Stewart who helped put the team together for Rick. Forey was on the national champion UCLA tennis team. And Ricky, by the way, was a great tennis player. Ricky was one of the top in the nation in 16-year-old and under. You know, so Forey had helped put this together. And there was a quote from Forey that I remember. He said, we kicked the ball off, and all of a sudden there was this great big thud, and I look around, and Kent, this raw-boned 18-year-old, had leveled Red. From there on, the game was played very vigorously. So
very cool. Well, you got to include that in your book.
Well, somewhere there, it'll wind up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Fred's watching this.
Hey, Fred, how you doing? Good to see you.
Fred runs the Kent McCord fan group on Facebook. Thanks for joining us, Fred.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, Fred's helped us out a lot. Appreciate it.
Stacy's watching from near Orlando.
Okay.
Linda's in Hoover, Indiana.
Hoover, Indiana, Hanover. Where is Hanover, Linda?
I know Hoover didn't seem right.
Yeah, Hanover. Yeah, Indiana. I've probably spent more time in my life in Indiana than I have any other place because I started going back to the 500 in 1970, and then I've been going back ever since. And I've missed about, because of the pandemic for openers, and then a couple other times. My son was born on May 27, 1975, so I missed that race. I went back for practice earlier. But as my wife was nearing her due date, I dare not say I'll be in Indiana at the 500.
No.
Hang on until I get home.
Right.
So I missed that year, and then a couple others. But going back and staying from as much as the entire month of May, when practice would open at the beginning of May, and you'd have the couple of weeks of practice, and then qualifying. The one first weekend, and then the second weekend. It's changed a little bit since then, but, again, I stay in Bloomington. I was staying in Martinsville for quite a while. I was staying in downtown Indianapolis at the guy that ran the Indianapolis, that owned the Indianapolis Star News, his suite in downtown Indianapolis. And I've enjoyed Indiana a whole lot. And by the way, congratulations on being the #1 team in the nation right now, going into these playoffs. I'm hoping Indiana wins it all.
Right. Here's a lengthy question from Toby. You want to check that out, from Frankfort, Kentucky.
You were born in Storm Lake. Wow. Yeah, that's the question. Does everybody see what the question is?
Yeah, they can see it.
They can see it. No.
Yeah.
Well, Storm Lake, Iowa. That's fabulous. My wife's. We were just talking about this over Thanksgiving. My wife had walked out. Her grandmother had a house that wandered down to the lake, and there was a little pier, and there was a fisherman fishing out there. And my wife had fallen into the lake. And her brother, who is 3 years older than her, this was a story at Thanksgiving dinner, wanders into the house and says to their mother, "Rocky just drowned." Her nickname is Rocky, my wife's. "Rocky just drowned." And Genevieve said, "What?" And Mike said, "Oh, she fell into the lake. She just drowned." And this fisherman had pulled her out. Thank God. And Mike, he just nonchalantly walks in, and Rocky drowned. So that was part of the memory and lore of Storm Lake. But the episode with Kristen, I don't think it was difficult for her at all. Kristen was, and is a good little performer. And she and her husband have a singing group. They sing, and she plays guitar and things, and
That's her creative output.
Yeah.
Corinne's watching. Hey, Corinne, see you on the Zoom thing.
Hi, Corinne. And I want to thank her for the birthday gift that she gave me.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
And we're going to talk tomorrow.
Yeah. Someone's asking, what were the football scores against Elvis?
What were the? I honestly don't remember what the end, how many times we scored touchdowns or anything. You got to take into account that Mike Hafner, who was our quarterback, went on to play with the Denver Broncos, and he was in the old single wing system, which was very much like the shotgun these days. But UCLA was one of the few schools left playing the single wing, where you actually hike the ball back to a tailback that was like 5 yards behind the center. And then from that, all plays worked. And Mike Hafner had just broken all the records of a very, very famous UCLA football player at that time, a man named Paul Cameron. So Mike was loaded. I just finished. I was a guard and a linebacker, and we had a man named Mel Profit, who was an All Pacific Coast Conference receiver. We had Ricky, who was very quick and handy and very athletic. We had another guy who was a blocking back in that single wing named Mitch Demkich. He was also a UCLA player, just finished his season. So I don't remember exactly what the score was. Red said it wasn't close, but I think Red misremembered something. I think it was a little further out there than what what he remembered. But I don't remember the exact score.
April's leaving a comment saying she still watches Adam 12 in North Carolina on MeTV. Best police show ever.
Well, I thank you very much for that. It's amazing that now we're coming up to 58 years since we first started it. 1968, September 68, we aired. That the show, the simplicity of the show was its charm. And I also think that it gave it we weren't sensationalizing everything. You look at it, and Bob Senator, who created Adam 12, said, the premise is really simple. It's two cops in a black and white in the streets of Los Angeles doing what two cops in a black and white in the streets of Los Angeles would do. And that was the premise of the show. And the rest of it, was, a writer would get an assignment. He'd be assigned to a sergeant. We had a grid, with a 459 disturbing the peace, or a 211 armed robbery of a liquor store, or you had this thing across, and we haven't done one of these. Go out and find something interesting. A writer was told he'd get out in the field, talk to cops, come back with an idea of what to do for that episode that he was assigned.
Sure.
And that was the show. And we had a technical advisor with us every day we shot, only in charge of what we did when we got out of the car and how you approached a suspected felon, and how you would conduct yourself and where you would stand if you're approaching a car, and whether it may be a bad guy with a gun inside of it. So all of that in the illusion of reality accidentally caught.
Yeah.
Was what Adam 12, I think, again, the charm of the show. Those things, those elements were what made it. And also, it's very interesting. The fact that we weren't doing an episode that had a beginning, a middle, and an end, like traditional television episodes do. And everybody questioned. Everybody questioned Bob Senator about, well, how are you going to do that? Trust me, he said, it'll work. So we may have had the little through line when we got in the car. Oh, where was I? Oh, yeah, I've got to do an article about you and blah, blah, blah. And we get back and we'd have that conversation. Or Queenie's got to have pups, and how do I get rid of them? Or one of those things. But the radio would go off, and it would be something tragic or funny or just, a waste of time. And that was in a half hour, the encapsulation of generally 8-hour day would be something like that.
And I think it was pretty cool watching the show now, seeing all the great actors that guest starred on it early in the movie.
We had so many people, and the funny thing, I wish I'd had IMDb in those days. I've got to show you something. There's a thing, and we may have done this before. I don't know if we have. I don't know if you can see this. This is my wife in high school. This is her sophomore picture. On the back of this picture,
I'm going to go full screen.
Let me see if I can get it. Can you see that?
Jim, somebody.
You can make that's Jim Arness.
Jim Arness, there you go.
So my wife was dating a friend of mine. We had all gone to the Hollywood Christmas parade in Hollywood. And they had a green room. There were about 6 of us guys, and I'm 15, and Stuart's the year ahead of me, and a couple of the guys were all the class, because I started playing varsity football when I was a sophomore, and so all those upperclassmen were friends of mine, and so we find out where the green room is, where all the celebrities are there until they get put into their car and then do the Christmas parade. And sitting over in a corner is Jim Arness. And for those of you who don't know who Jim Arness is, Jim Arness, number one, was the star of Gunsmoke that ran for 22 years. Unheard of at that time. Some other shows have met it or exceeded it, but unheard of for that time. Secondly, when he was kind of by himself, I got Jane Mansfield, Mariska Hargitay's mother. I got Jane Mansfield autograph on the back of my student body card, and I can't find that card. I think it's in a box in the garage somewhere, and I'll run across it one of these days. But Stuart got on the back of Rocky's picture, Jim Arness's, and he's sitting over in a corner by himself, and we're talking to him, and a woman comes over that's working the parade.
And what year was this?
Well, I was 15, so this is 1957.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Because Rocky and I started going together in 1958.
Oh, that's insane.
So this is like Christmas of 57.
Yeah.
And the woman sees us and she says, "You boys don't belong here. You have to leave." And Arness says, "These boys are with me. That's okay for them to stay." Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
he was in a great sci-fi movie I love called The Thing from Another World.
Oh yeah.
It was in the 50s, early 50s, I think.
Yeah. And so he was kind of all by himself, just this quiet guy. Well, the interesting thing about, not interesting, but dumb me, I do Airplane 2, and who am I sitting next to for all this time? And not only that, one of the first things that I did under contract at Universal was a show that was called Dark Behind the Door. I think the name of the episode was. It was an episode of Run for Your Life with Peter Graves. Now then, a number of years later, 15 years later or something, I'm doing Airplane 2, and Peter and I are sitting next to each other. And not only that, and for those of you who don't know, Peter Graves is Jim Arness's brother. And I don't remember this incident. And not only that, I'm in my dentist's office one time, and then in walks Arness, and I completely forget this whole episode that happened all those years ago. And I didn't want to kind of embarrass Arness sitting in the dentist's office. They basically took him right in.
Right.
And and I'd been doing Adam 12 by this time and everything. But it just slipped my mind. And you look at these things and you see people like Scott Brady. The other night, Margaret O'Brien was on one of the episodes, and you just go down the line. Tina Sinatra, Frank Sinatra Jr. is on it. Trini Lopez, who became a friend.
I was just at a convention talking to Tim Matheson.
And Tim Matheson, one of the first things he ever did, is on Adam 12, and all of these people that we got a chance to work with. It was really a lot of fun. But you look back at it and you go, Andy Duggan. I did a movie, working background, and I very prominent at the end of the movie called 7 Days in May. I hand Frederick March the resignations of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in that movie, and Andy Duggan is in that, and then I do a movie of the week that is a pilot for a series that didn't sell called Pine Canyon is Burning, and Andy's on that. And I forget the incident that we had when we were working on 7 Days in May. So, a story about that. I'm coming back from Detroit. We were doing a an appearance in Detroit. I don't know if you remember this. And I rented a car and I drove the Detroit convention coincided with like the weekend before the 500.
I think that was 2015 or 2016.
Yeah. And so I'm driving from Detroit to Indianapolis, and I see Fairmont, Indiana. And I go, James Dean's home. And I'm going to take the time. I've got time. I drive to Fairmont, and I talk to some people and everything, and then the next year, and I meet Marcus, his cousin, Marcus Winslow, who still has the farm that James Dean grew up on. And for those of you who don't know who James Dean is, he died very young. When it would have been, he did 3 movies that were just unbelievable films, and was just this incredible shooting star and killed in an automobile accident going to a race up in Central California. And so then the next year, Rocky is with me and we drive up to Fairmont, and they open up the museum and they do all of this stuff for us. And we go talk with Marcus, and I've got my picture with my wife in the car that James Dean drove to high school in, which is the same car that I had in high school, by the way. And like it, the same year and model. And so I sign up for a newsletter. And when Marty died in 2015, the newsletter comes, and it has a section about performers or actors who worked with James Dean. And it has a whole thing about Marty.
And he never talked about it.
And he never talked about it. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. Well, it was on the Stu Irwin show back in the very early days of television that Marty was a regular on. And I can only chalk it up to like this thing with Arness and what happens in your, that there were, he was probably just another young actor coming on and doing a day job.
Sure.
And Marty may not have even, other than, hi, I'm Jim, he may have said to Marty, and Marty probably said, I'm Marty, and
he worked with so many people over his career.
Yeah. And then, you've done a day, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
And so you can look up Martin Milner and James Dean on YouTube and find that scene. And Marty never said one word about working with the legendary James Dean. I can only chalk it up to the same kind of, brain fade that you have when you're talking. You got a whole lot of performers, that you're.
Somebody's asking, fans of the classic, have you ever met Steve McQueen?
I didn't. I worked on. No, what the hell is the name of the movie with Jackie Gleason? Come up, somebody look at IMDb on Jackie Gleason. And I worked on that movie, and I have looked at that movie a couple times now. I can't find me, but I was there. Jackie Gleason, Tony Bill, Steve McQueen, and so I got to watch McQueen work. A big fan of his work, from the Wanted Dead or Alive, or going into a movie that I'll watch anytime it's in front of me, and not. I've got a DVD of it and everything, which is The Magnificent Seven.
Soldier in the Rain.
Soldier in the Rain.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that I got a chance to watch a lot of really good performers work when I was working background.
Sure. And you worked with Jerry Lewis as well, right?
I did, very prominent in the opening credits of the intern.
Rebecca's asking, did you get to meet Chuck Connors on Airplane 2?
I met Chuck Connors over a lot of different things. Yeah. He was terrific. Johnny Crawford was somebody who I knew, and was always, such a nice guy. grew up young in the movie business, understood what the film was about. And Connors, I would see he had a table at Musso and Frank's when you walk in the door, and Chuck would be over in the thing. And he was I served so long on the Screen Actors Guild Board of Directors, and I had a lot of supporters out in the community for my efforts on the board, and protecting actors and their wages and their working conditions. So, I had when I was organizing events and things, a lot of connections came from being on the board and as an officer of the union over all those years, and people who would come in to support whatever effort it was that we were trying to attain.
Yeah. Chuck Connors was in a great horror film from the 80s called Tourist Trap, or it might have been late 70s.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was kind of at the end of his career. He wanted to be like the next Vincent Price. He wanted to do horror films at the end of his career.
Yeah.
But never took off for him.
Yeah.
He died shortly after that.
Yeah.
Well, Rebecca's asking what it was like working with Jerry. I finally watched that movie.
Oh, well, that was one of the things where he was directing and acting in it. So he was never available for anything. And he was one of the early adopters. A Mitchell camera, film camera, is a pretty big beast compared to what they have now. So, when you have it on a crab dolly, which is a little, like a little four-wheeled vehicle that they mount the camera on, and then the camera's up there. He had a video. He was the very first guy that I ever saw do this. He had a video camera videoing the takes. So you do a take and the cut, and then he'd go back and look at the video playback to see if it was okay, and then on to the next shot. So that was very much what was going on with that. And so you really never got a, you don't, when a guy is the guy on a set, and is in almost, and I think he probably was in every shot of that movie. There's no time to get to know anybody. You're there, and especially when you're working background.
Yeah, he was a busy guy.
Yeah.
If someone asking what's your favorite Christmas movie?
Well, I have to say It's a Wonderful Life.
Sure, classic.
You go back to the thing I've grown up with all my life, and then there's the Christmas, the Darren McGavin, Billingsley
Christmas Story. Yeah, right.
Sticks his tongue on, it's stuck there, which is a great movie. But It's a Wonderful Life. A good friend of mine who I continue to see and talk with, and we have breakfast every now and then. Jimmy Hawkins, who was the youngest son of Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed in that movie, and and Jimmy was also on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, where we became friends, and so yeah, that's another one of those evergreen movies that's never ever going to get old.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
April's mentioning she's a fan of Nashville Beat.
Well,
very cool.
That was the one that got away, unfortunately. And I was just talking to the writer that I worked with, Hannah Shearer, who wrote the script. She and I put the story together, and she did the script. And I was talking to Hannah today. I had come up with a man who just died the other day, a man named Steve Downing, who you'll see his credit on Adam 12. It's Michael Donovan on most of the episodes of Adam 12. Steve was an LAPD sergeant. He's in the pilot of Adam 12. When we are told to go out to the park at the very end, Steve is standing there. There are two police officers, and Steve is the sergeant standing there. And then he became a writer. He was an LAPD cop, our first technical advisor. And we became friends over all these decades. And when Adam 12 ended, we created a project called Lincoln 20 where Marty said, find me something where I only have to show up half a day. And so Steve and I came up with a concept called Lincoln 20. And in the vernacular of LAPD, an L car is a single man car, single person car. And an Adam is a 2-person car. M is a motorcycle. So the 20 designation means a supervisor or, somebody who is over, has a place of authority out there. So Lincoln 20 was going to be Kent McCord, Jim Reed, now a sergeant. Marty was going to be the lieutenant in the station saying, go get him and go home. He wanted to go back to Fallbrook. And so we created Lincoln 20 and Universal didn't want to do it. And so we sold the project to a company called Taft Broadcasting, and Universal threatened a lawsuit. And we couldn't get past that threat. And because Taft wanted us to indemnify them against the lawsuit, and that would be just inconceivable nobody would give us insurance against that or anything, and we couldn't, not, defend,
No. Yeah, we can't go up against Universal.
Yeah. So when we were meeting we were going to do a series of training videos. Steve Downing was going to be involved in the training videos thing, and we'd already done, we had the conflict with Lincoln 20. And I'm sitting with a bunch of guys who are going to be investors in this concept of doing training videos with Marty and me. And the guy says, somebody was late to the meeting and said, tell them about that thing that happened with Universal and what you decided to do. And I said, well, Universal threatened a lawsuit because we were in uniform. So I took us out of uniform. I created a concept called Hollywood Division where Marty and I are working plain clothes. And so we're going to do stories about Hollywood. We got Hollywood Boulevard with the tourists. We got the hookers on Sunset, and we got, the rest of the humanity down on Santa Monica. And we do stories, based on Hollywood. And the guy sitting there says, can you do that concept in Nashville? And Marty and I had been to Nashville on a few occasions. Mm-hmm. And we'd done telethons down there, and we were there for a car show and all these other things. And I said, yeah, we can do that down there. As a matter of fact, most of the guys that retire from LAPD wind up becoming chiefs in smaller areas. This had happened with a couple of guys that I knew. One became the chief of Lakeland, Colorado, and another guy had gone on and been a chief. So I make Marty a chief of detectives in Nashville dealing with a drug problem, and his old partner and pal, Kent, is the head of the division or the unit that's tracking gangbangers who are going from Los Angeles, spreading out across the country, selling drugs. And we do that thing. We do the script and everything. We go down and we shoot the thing, and it's a 2-hour movie of the week. And we're penciled in for 104 half-hour episodes. Mm-hmm. And we aired the pilot, and it got better numbers than anything that Nashville Network had on at that time. But it wasn't USA cable numbers, and they freaked out, and they decided not to do it. They would have had a third investment into what it would have cost each episode. They were picking up a third of the cost. My partners in that were picking up a third of the cost, and ABC International was picking up a third of the cost on the budget. And Nashville Network backed out. They said they could put 2 talking heads on spinning, country western music, and for $5,000 a half hour, and their investment of about 90, they couldn't justify it in their heads. So we would have been we were the first movie of the week on the Nashville Network, and we would have been the first dramatic half hour filmed show on there. And it was just the one that got away. We had so much fun down there, and it was, and we actually had an offer. We had taken the project and gone and tried to move it somewhere else. And a company from Canada offered to buy the show. And they said, but we want to replace Martin Milner with a Canadian actor. And I said, without Marty, there's no show. I wouldn't do it without Marty.
The fans wouldn't have watched it.
Yeah, and that was the only reason. We just had a whole lot of fun working together. And again, like I said, when towards the end of the production in Nashville, Rocky and the kids flew back, and Judy and a couple of their kids flew back, and we rented a big town car and drove to Indianapolis for the 500, and then drove back the next, after the race was over to finish up Nashville beat, and so that would have been our a dream scenario for me. And to continue, because we had a great time working together.
Yeah. Well, at least you got to make the pilot together.
Yeah.
Cool.
And by the way, People Magazine, when they reviewed it, said, I think the reviewer said something like, "I'd watch these guys read the telephone book." And it was a nice comment on.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool. Kent McCord fan is asking, how does it feel to watch your own work?
For a long time, now I'm far enough away from it where I can kind of look at it like an audience. And one of the revelatory things that has occurred, especially watching Adam 12. My wife loves Adam 12. She likes the young guy in it.
I hope so.
But one of the funny things for me to watch is that I'm no longer self-conscious about my work. And going, oh God, why did I look? What did I do? That kind. I'm like, okay, and I can watch Marty now, and the little subtle things that Marty did that I never really noticed. I've watched, and I'll say to my wife, watch Marty's little twinkle in his eye that the rookie has just achieved something. And I never really noticed those little things that Marty did, or a little smile or something that, and it's really, he was such a good performer, such a good human being.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's cool that you can look back and watch yourself and all those. And
yeah, it's when you're looking back going back to the Ozzie and Harriets.
Yeah.
I started working on Ozzie and Harriet in '61, just working background. I see me in the background, and then I started throwing lines my way. And then I had my first words, and somewhere on YouTube is that scene where Ozzie and Harriet come into where there's a house at the party, at Ozzie and Harriet's house, a party there. And Ozzie and Harriet come home early, and Skip Young, who plays Wally, says, do you know where Rick is? I said, who's Rick in this party? It's just, and that was the first thing that got me my Screen Actors Guild card. Who's Rick?
There you go.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Janine is asking if you did all the running or you had a stunt double.
No, I loved running. There are a few things that I looked at something the other day and I went, wait a minute. Now that it's all so clear, I can see where I did 90% of all that stuff. There were a few things that I didn't do, but the 90%, was me. And I was quick in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta be in good shape.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking if you've ever been pulled over for speeding and you got recognized.
Yes, I was.
Did you get a ticket?
I'll tell you the story. Jack Webb said to us, both Marty and me, when we started, Jack said, you're going to be joining a very small fraternity. Don't embarrass them and don't embarrass yourself. If you've done something wrong, buy it. Don't do this BS of trying to talk your way out of it. So both Marty and I took that to heart. And so I had a Corvette. And living in Hollywood, I was going to a camera shop that closed at noon on Sunday. I think it was a Sunday. They were open like 6.5 days. And there was a camera that I wanted to buy, and it was Sunday, and I got in my car and I get up to the top of Laurel Canyon at Moho, and I go, Christ, I forgot my wallet. I drive back home, I get it, and I'm barreling over the Laurel Canyon, headed down in the valley. And I look up, and there's a motorcycle officer, red lights, bleep, bleep, with the siren. And I pull over, and he's straddling the bike, and smoke is coming out of his ears. I was honking. I mean, I was coming down Laurel Canyon pretty quick. And he's kind of straddling the bike, and he's got this real hard look on his face. And I get out of the car, and I see recognition. I could tell he recognized who I was. And I said to him, I was wrong. Write me the ticket. And he said, after everything you've done for us, and he cranked the bike and he took off. That was the one.
Pretty cool.
The other times, there were maybe 2 other times I got ticketed twice. I got ticketed one time, and I just thought it was the worst thing in the world. And I got ticketed. It was by Burbank Police Department. We were just on the street the other day, and we're driving. I am by myself on a hot summer day, and I want to get something cool to drink. And there's a giant tree on Hollywood Way going towards Warner Brothers, and I'm going down Hollywood Way, and out from behind this tree emerges a 7-Eleven. And I pull into the left-hand turn lane to pull into the 7-Eleven driveway. And there's cars. I've got a red light in front of me, and the cross traffic is going by. And I pull into that, and then I make my left-hand turn into the 7-Eleven. And I'm starting to get out of the car, and the next thing, there's a motor officer back there, and he's getting off his bike, and he says, let me see your registration and your driver's license. And I said, what did I do? He said, you didn't clear the entrance to the left-hand turn lane. And I said, oh, come on. He said, see your driver's license. And he writes me a ticket. So I go challenge that. And I'm in court in Burbank. And I challenged the ticket, and the judge says to me, I said, guilty with an explanation. Well, there is no such thing, really. Guilty with an explanation. He says, do you want to go to driver's school, or do you want to go to trial on this thing? I said, those are my 2 choices. He said, yeah. And I said, I'll go to driver's school. He says, okay, go do the bailiff thing. And I walk over to the bailiff, and the bailiff says, you should have worn your uniform.
That's funny.
So I went to traffic school, and that didn't wind up on my insurance record.
Wow.
But that was one of the other times.
You never know. Did you ever get to meet Don Knotts?
Yes. Yeah. Don Knotts. We were shooting, and Don Knotts brought one of his kids over who loved Adam 12. And this happens with I remember taking Kristen, who was on Adam 12 when she was younger, over to the Partridge Family. And I've got a great picture of her and David. One of David's early things, David Cassidy, one of his early things was an episode of Adam 12. And then him and his stepmother, Shirley Jones, are doing Partridge Family, and Kristen's just in love. I've got this wonderful picture of David and Kristen together. And they're, David's half-brother, Ryan Cassidy, is a real good friend of mine. And but I did meet Don when he came over to the set, and I was thrilled. I had worked one day on an episode of Andy Griffith, and that's on YouTube somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, I did meet
Yeah,
Don.
he was great.
Yeah.
His expressions, were
Mr. Limpet, shaky as gun.
Sarah's asking, what genre do you like acting in the best?
Well, it's the dramatic stuff is good and fun. Things that are real. And so it's real hard to say, what, I love doing Airplane 2. Yeah, that was fun with all the, the stuff. By the way, in Airplane 2, one of the things the script that I have, and I just found the script that I received, the exit from the space shuttle in Airplane 2 was one of the things that I thought will live forever. And then they changed the way we got sucked out into space. The original one was every once in a while they cut to the toilet, and that sucking sound that happens with airplane toilets. And then all of a sudden a red light goes off in the cockpit, and Peter Graves says, "Go check the #1 toilet." And I open the door and it starts sucking me in. And it pulls off my sleeve and it pulls me out. And then all of a sudden I'm sucked out of the space shuttle through the toilet and I'm floating out in space. Well, they changed it to that airlock opening and James Watson Huygens, and I thought, damn, why'd you do that? People, that would have been hilarious. It was, just the visual of the thing was, I wish they hadn't. But, when you're working with good performers and you're having fun, that's the main thing. And and the dramatic stuff is fun to do. The things, real things happening to real people.
Yeah. Rachel says she's a Hallmark fan. Are you ever going to be in a Hallmark family movie?
I probably not. I'm not really looking anymore. We've had a couple things that have come up, and I turned down one, and the other thing didn't pan out, and I wish it had. So I'm not really looking. But Dominic's received a few inquiries, and we followed up on them. And like I said, one thing. And I'm still not sure what happened to it. I really wish I could find out what happened to it.
Yeah, I haven't heard any news yet.
Yeah, and it's no secret. It was to play Brad Pitt's father in this new movie that he's doing right now, The Adventures of Cliff Booth. And so I don't know whoever got the role. I haven't seen it, but we had some real serious moments with that, and I would have loved to have done that.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
Yeah, it is a bummer. And the other thing was an episodic, and it just didn't work out. So,
yeah, very cool. Let's see what else we got here. I guess we're going back to the football game. What position did you play?
Well, I was an interior lineman, in high school and college, and that's where I was. I was blocking people and rushing, rushing the passer, and in touch football game, you're rushing the guy who's got the football. We weren't playing tackle in at the park. I was an interior lineman. Very
cool. Someone was asking about Diagnosis Murder.
Yeah, we had a great time. That reunited Marty and me, and also Barry Van Dyke. Barry was with me on Galactic in 1980. And again, lucky for me to have a partner like Barry in that instance. And so we had a lot of fun doing the Diagnosis Murder with Jimmy Darren and Angie Dickinson and Fred Dreyer and Martin and me. And, I got to reunite with Barry a little bit on that. So, and his father, by the way, is turning 100 years old.
Just going to mention that. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, just now. And what a great, I am sorry that Barry and I haven't touched together. Our kids were, my son, who's now 50, they were just little tykes running around on the set of Galactic in 1980. So, a very good guy.
Apparently Barry was just talking about the series on Facebook, saying how much he loved it.
Oh, well, I really, if he's on Facebook, I don't do Facebook, so I'm not sure how all that, but does he have a Facebook page? Is that what?
I'm guessing he does.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he does.
And I'm amazed that we didn't that we haven't run across each other than that time on the diagnosis since then.
Yeah, at a convention or something.
Yeah.
Then we've got a question about Lauren Green.
Well, Lauren was okay to work with. Lauren, again, he was he'd had great success, wonderful film career, Bonanza. He'd been in the original Galactica, Battlestar Galactica, and then we're doing the Galactica 1980. And Lauren was really in one of those modes like Marty wanted to be in. Put me in there for a day and get me out of there. And he was helpful as a performer in giving, and we really didn't get to mesh much because, like I said, he was in there and gone. And that was, I look at it from where I am now, 83 years old. Get me that role.
Right.
Where I show up for the day. I'm getting the biggest salary of anybody on this set. And all I have to do is be there in the morning, maybe into the afternoon, and I can get home.
It's full cycle. All you have to do is say, "Who's Rick?" now.
Yeah, right.
You're back to that.
Yeah, yes. And out.
Linda's asking if you stayed in touch with Martin Miller's children.
Yeah, Marty and Judy's kids, I do. I stay in touch with Andy and Stuart. I haven't had any contact with Molly, but I've talked with Andy and Stuart. Andy works for Johnny Depp, by the way, I'm the answer to a trivia question that was in the introduction, the piece of film. I played Johnny Depp's father in 21 Jump Street.
That's right.
And by the way, to give credit to somebody who we just did a documentary, I did a day with Steve Cannell's two daughters, Tanya and Chelsea, where the girls were shooting a documentary on their father, and so Steve Cannell, who was the second most prolific producer of television product in its history after Aaron Spelling, we became friends. Marty and I went to bat for him to get him hired on Adam 12, and from there, the rest is history. And we just did that documentary. I'm not sure when it's going to be out or where, but got to run into a bunch of old friends, on that day. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Somebody says it'd be great to have you guest star on our show. Just say Rick who.
Yeah, yeah. We'll figure that one out.
April says she just watched the Laugh-In clip and enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Martin was wanting to get the heck out of there, and I couldn't get my tickle, my funny bone to settle down, and it worked out. And then the interesting thing about Laugh-In, when the pandemic hit and we're sitting here at home and we're isolating, and I'm going, let's look at Laugh-In. All 144 episodes of Laugh-In are available. And I said, when we started watching, I said, we never watched Laugh-In. Laugh-In was on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock at night. We were doing it, and it ran the same period of time that Adam 12 ran. So we were shooting, you're up at 5:30 in the morning to get to the studio, to get made up, to get to the location, to get, to do Adam 12. So I was never up at 10 o'clock on Tuesday night to watch Laugh-In. I saw some of them in rerun. But we started watching. I said, this is all new. And they are hilarious. They are really some of the best sketch comedy that ever been captured. And to be able to watch them all, we just filled until we finished all those episodes. And so episodes came up that I forgot we did, because we'd just run over. We'd be at Universal and go over to NBC, pop in and do a thing where it was just, the John Wayne thing. Duke doesn't hop the way he used to. I said, I don't think Duke does anything the way you used to, or so whatever the words were, and
Yeah,
so
great that we still have those in such good quality.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess I kind of hinted to a book. Daniel's asking if there's any news or any kind of news about your book, but
No, I keep
Unofficial.
adding. I've got it. It's inside this computer I'm looking at, and I keep adding things. And I've got a friend of mine who's a terrific writer. One of the I left home when I was 15 with the blessings of my parents. They moved 100 miles from where I had grown up, and I tried it 100 miles away. And I went to them at the end of the summer, and I said, I don't want to be here. And they let me go. And I always, I was adult enough at that point that they had trust in me. I had started working in my dad's gas station when I was 10. I was working in an airport when I was 13, pumping gas and washing airplanes and propping airplanes to get them. And so they had trust in me. And I lived with a family and my friend Warren Easley. And if you look on Amazon and look at Warren's series of books that are up there, Warren C. Easley, author. We were just together a month ago. He was down doing a thing about his new book that he has out. But Warren said, "You need to hire a ghostwriter and get off your ass and get this done."
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it's one thing to have all this stuff saved and but the narration of it.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking maybe I just need to do what I'm doing here and just do it into a, and do an audio visual.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe
Just have
that's
somebody edit it.
Yeah.
Edit the information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it'd be great. Or otherwise, it would be like 4 parts.
Well, just like I said, Steve Downing, who just passed away from sepsis, which just you just shake your head at that.
Yeah.
Get a blood infection and takes you out, and that just happened. So and you just there's a diminishing thing when you're where I am and as active as I stay and get to the gym, and I've always been very diet conscious, as you know, Don.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't junk food it.
No.
By the way, speaking of junk fooding it, the other day we had this great box of assorted chocolates and everything. And I looked at the date on it. It was 2023. It had never been opened. And I looked up on the internet. I said, how good is chocolate good for? Well, 3 or 4 months if you get a box of See's candy. This was 2 years old. I opened the thing up. I opened it up. And by God, I mean, it would have made you throw up. The interior was all, I don't know, kind of molded and everything. And I tossed it all the other day. And I said to my wife, because we got another box just like it at Thanksgiving. And I said, keep this in the refrigerator for right now. But we had never opened the other one from 2 years ago, this great assortment of chocolates. And I hate to even open this one. I think we'll give it away because I hate to be tempted. I remove the temptation from my.
Yeah, that's probably smart. You stick to the salad and vegetables and chicken and the same stuff, right? Keep it healthy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm looking to see if there's any last minute questions here. Otherwise, we're coming up on an hour and a half. People are just saying they're excited about potential about the book. So I'm sure we'll update once that gets moving.
Yeah.
And,
by the way, I want to give you, a couple things happened, that Gunnar and Matthew Nelson, I stay in touch with Ricky's boys, twins. And they were just out here doing a performance at the Coach House in Costa Mesa in Orange County. And we got together. And the boys have a book coming out. So I think it is on Amazon. I know the pre-sale was happening on Amazon. So Gunnar and Matthew Nelson. And then they just had a fabulous video. The John Cena series.
John Cena?
John Cena.
Yeah, the wrestler.
Yeah. That has a series that's out. They just did a music video.
Is it Peacemaker?
Huh?
Is it Peacemaker?
Yeah, Peacemaker.
Peacemaker. Okay.
Yeah, look up Gunn and Matt's video off of that. Wow, I mean, it just kicked butt. I was so proud of them, on this thing, and it was a big boost to them because it was the director sent somebody to see them, and they were very big in the 18, 19 years old and the hairband thing and all of that, but they are really fabulous in live performance. They did just an acoustic set, the two of them with a guitar, and one guy got up and played a little bass with them for a bit of it, but they just did a performance that was just so outstanding. This was the end of September, because the boys were born on September 20th. They just turned 57.
Wow.
I'm born September 26th, so I just had turned 83, and that was the end of that. And so I guess maybe it was the day before they turned. So September 19th they were here, and so they've got a book coming out if you get that, and then there's another book about Ozzie Nelson that was written by a man. It was called The Adventures of Ozzie Nelson, and it is one of the most fabulous books that I've ever looked at. If you're old enough and of a mind to look at all of those adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, if you have young kids at home and you want to watch something that is just fun to watch about a family with two young boys growing up, and they grow up on television, as a matter of fact, from the time that Rick and David were 14 and 11 until, from 1952 on television until 1966. And it's good, real good entertainment. And like I said earlier, the product, when they restruck those and they digitized them, are unbelievable to look at. And so Rocky and I started at episode 1. We were there, from the beginning. We were there in 1952 when this little show called The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet has come on television. I can still hear my mother yelling, and my nickname is Bucky, for those of you who don't know, Bucky and Rocky. And so my name came out of my mother singing me to sleep, go to sleep, my little buckaroo, when I was a baby. And Rocky's came from her getting up on her haunches in her crib or on the floor and rocking back and forth. She was never Cynthia to anybody in the family. I was never Kent to anybody in the family.
It's funny.
And we wind up, being Bucky and Rocky. But watching, those, we were there, and I could hear my mother yelling, "Bucky, Ozzie and Harriet's beginning," when I'd come into the house. And we'd watch that show religiously, and the fact that I wound up on it, and then the other groundbreaking show of that era, Dragnet, and one of the last things before we wrap is that Ozzie Nelson and Jack Webb both came out of radio, both created shows that were the prototype detective police procedural, and the situation family comedy was Ozzie and Harriet, and they both were the arbiters of what were acceptable on that show, on Dragnet or on Ozzie and Harriet. Ozzie was the director, the writer, the producer, the editor. He was approved all the casting, everything. Same thing with Jack Webb. Directed all the episodes, was in on the writing of most of the episodes, did all the editing. He had good editors and people around him, as Ozzie did. But they were the ones that sat down, looked at the finished product, and said, "That's good. No changes need to be made." And I got a chance, to grow up and work with both those people.
Well, life is funny sometimes, It's weird. Somebody said Bucky and Rocky would make a good Western, The Adventures of Bucky and Rocky.
Yeah. Yes.
I guess it has been an adventure for many years for you guys.
Maybe I'll name the book that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Just give her and Ella credit.
Yeah, we've only been together 67 years now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's incredible. Well, thank you, Fred. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Fred saying goodbye. And,
all right. Well,
and I do want to remind everybody that if you enjoyed this and you'd like to chat with Kent personally, He'll be doing Zoom chats tomorrow, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we still have a few slots open. You can go to fullempirepromotions.com and book it there, as well as autographed pictures and video greetings. And those are a lot of fun. So thank you so much to everyone who's joining us. And
One last plug, Dominic. One last plug.
Okay.
The image behind me is the Los Angeles Police Museum in Highland Park, California. Out here, this is the exhibit. It's been up there now for about 4 years, and it's very popular at their museum, and I'm very proud of that. It's where the real REEL cops meet the REAL cops, the real cops.
Great.
And that museum is really a gem for those of you, if you're out visiting Los Angeles and you want to see something that's kind of off the beaten path. So
yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And I do want to remind everybody that you can meet Kent in person next April 10th, 11th, and 12th. We'll be at Steel City Con in Pittsburgh. So check that out. It's a great show, and you'll love meeting Kent. Well, I guess that's it from us. Just seeing if there's any other questions. Everybody's just saying thank you. So thanks so much to everyone who joined us, and happy holidays. And we'll see you probably sometime in the spring when we do this again.
Be very safe, everybody, and happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you, guys.